Clara, a young woman full of ambition, leaves the city with the hope of finding a fresh start. She boards the luxurious train, gripping her old suitcase tightly, unable to erase the worries in her heart. This massive train, with its elegantly dressed passengers and the golden glow from the chandeliers, is not a place she belongs. The people around her seem like ghosts in the opulent space, as if they don't even notice her presence. Clara feels like an outsider, walking amidst the gazes that don't seem to be directed at her. She looks around, confused and lost in a world so different from the simple life she left behind. She cannot stop thinking about the reason she decided to board this train. She left for one reason only: to find new opportunities, hoping that somewhere there would be a place that could offer her a better life. But now, standing among these sophisticated passengers, she feels as though she has lost her way. Thoughts swirl in her mind, questions arise with no answers. Why did she choose to enter such an unfamiliar world? Then once again, like a breeze passing through, she meets Dylan. A man perfect in every gesture, every glance, every smile. Her first look at him was like a flash of light, dazzling and captivating. He was handsome, charming, and seemed to have an air of mystery that made Clara's heart skip a beat instantly. They began to talk, and in those conversations, Clara felt like she had found someone who truly understood her, someone who could share the emotions, the dreams she had always kept hidden. The late-night talks on the train, the smiles, and the meaningful glances gradually closed the distance between them. Clara felt as if she was stepping into a new world, where love could be something gentle, delicate, and full of surprises. But when she woke up the next morning, everything returned to a terrifying silence. Dylan was no longer there. Clara began to search for him all over the train, calling, texting, but there was no response. A sense of shock and emptiness overwhelmed her. She couldn't understand, couldn't explain why the man she trusted, the man she thought could be a part of her life, could vanish so quickly. All that was left were a jumble of unanswered questions. In the following days, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the trip and about Dylan. Since she boarded that train, her life had completely changed. Everything now seemed hazy and out of reach. Then, something she never expected happened. Clara found out she was pregnant. Not just one, but 2 children. She couldn't believe it. Couldn't accept that her life had completely changed after just one night. Worries, doubts about the future began to rise within her. She couldn't understand why this was happening to her, and even less why Dylan had left, leaving her with unanswered questions. The luxurious train, where she had searched for a bright future, had now become a nightmare. Long, sleepless nights, lonely days filled with conflicting emotions that were slowly building up inside her. Clara felt as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing where to go, what to do to overcome the turmoil in her soul. But in that storm, one thing she knew for sure: everything had changed. She couldn't go back, but she also couldn't move forward without answers. She had to find Dylan, had to understand what happened, and had to face reality more strongly than ever before. Clara could not stop thinking about Dylan, even though he had left her life after one night filled with intense emotions. After the unexpected encounter on the luxurious train, Clara could not stop thinking about that man. How many times had she tried to pick up the phone, call him, send messages, but all in vain. The calls went unanswered, the messages were unread, and the emails sent received no reply. Dylan's silence, his sudden absence, left Clara confused and full of anxiety. She began to wonder if she had done something wrong, if she had left a bad impression that made him not want to return. Each day that passed, the fear in her heart grew stronger, making her feel like a wandering ghost in her own world. The anxiety became even heavier when Clara found out she was pregnant. Not just one, but 2 children. This news hit her like a shock, making the chaotic thoughts in her mind even more unclear. She didn't know what to do, didn't know how to face the future. She needed to contact Dylan, needed to find out if he still cared about her, but all her efforts failed. Long, sleepless nights, tears she could not hold back fell quietly as she remembered that night when Dylan and she shared wonderful moments. But now he was no longer with her, not present in the most important moments of her life. Not only that, but Clara began to feel the stigma from the society around her. She couldn't go out without receiving judgmental looks, harsh gossip. The people around her didn't understand. They didn't know that Clara was just a young woman, full of hope and a desire to find a new life. But now, the financial difficulties, the stigma from those around her, and the emptiness in her heart made her feel like she was being pushed into a battle that she could never win. Would anyone understand her? Would anyone see the pain she was enduring? She felt lost and helpless in the life she was trying to build. With perseverance and determination, Clara didn't give up. She decided to search for Dylan, even though she didn't know where he was or if he still wanted to meet her. She began searching for information about him, trying to understand everything she could about the man. Long nights without sleep, hours spent searching, Clara discovered a truth that left her stunned. Dylan was not just the mysterious man she had met on the train. He was the heir to a large railroad corporation. He was one of the people with immense power and wealth, someone from a world Clara had never once entered. She could not believe what she was finding, couldn't understand why someone like Dylan would come into her life, someone as ordinary as her. The more Clara learned about Dylan, the more she felt lost in the very story she was living. Did Dylan still care about her? Or was it just a fleeting moment, something that could never become reality? Why had he not shown up when she needed him the most? The unanswered questions surrounded her, making Clara feel as if she were being pushed into a dark corner with no way out. She didn't know if there was still a chance to find Dylan, if there was still hope for her future and the children inside her. The worries and doubts kept growing inside Clara. She couldn't stop thinking about Dylan. Couldn't stop imagining that he might never come back, that her life would have to go on without the presence of that man. Clara began to feel like a loser, like someone standing on the sidelines of a life she thought she could be part of. These questions clung to her, and no one could provide a satisfactory answer. She was trapped in anxiety, in uncertainty about her future. However, Clara knew she could not stop. She could not let herself fall before the difficulties in Dylan's silence. She would continue searching, would continue facing everything difficult in this life, because in her heart, there was still hope. There was still faith that one day, everything would become brighter. Clara could not stop searching for Dylan. Every day that passed, she spent her time asking around, looking for any clues that could bring her closer to him. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find any information about him. The calls continued to be ignored. The messages and emails were left unanswered. Despite this, Clara still couldn't give up. The feeling of Dylan's absence, the impression he left on her after that night, was deeply engraved in her heart, unable to be erased. Then one day, while watching a TV show in the evening, Clara suddenly saw Dylan. His image appeared on the screen, looking composed and powerful. He was not the same man she had met on the luxurious train, but a different person, a man of authority, holding an important position in a famous corporation. Clara was stunned, shocked by the image of him. She couldn't believe her eyes. The confusion overwhelmed her as the screen showed a Dylan completely different from the one she knew. How could he be part of that lavish world? How could the man she had just met be the heir to a massive fortune? Something Clara had never imagined. Everything became more confusing. She couldn't understand their relationship. That romantic night, that one night they shared together, did it really mean anything to him? Did Dylan know who she was? Did he recognize the connection they had built? Or was it just a fleeting moment, an insignificant relationship with a woman he met only once? She hadn't been able to contact him after that night, and now she saw him on television, participating in important affairs, in a world that seemed entirely unrelated to her. The questions in Clara's mind became increasingly tangled and hard to answer. She couldn't explain why Dylan hadn't shown up when she needed him most, and why he had remained silent. Everything now seemed like a mystery that Clara couldn't solve. She wondered whether she had been too quick to trust a man she had just met, or if she was the one being deceived. Clara continued to dig deeper into Dylan's life. Every day she read more about him, not only from television shows but also from articles and magazines. Although everything only brought more questions, Clara could not stop. She began to look into Dylan's family and quickly discovered something strange. His family was not what she had imagined. The relationships within Dylan's family were full of mystery, and particularly, it seemed like his family members were hiding something. Was there something happening in Dylan's world that she didn't know about? His family dynamics appeared troubled, and every time she tried to dig deeper, she only received vague, unclear responses from those involved. One day, Clara decided to visit one of Dylan's longtime employees, hoping to find some information about him. She sat in a small cafe, a quiet space amid the peaceful early morning, when the man appeared. He was a middle-aged man who had worked long with Dylan's family, but it seemed he was unwilling to reveal too much. Every answer he gave was full of insinuations, making Clara unable to understand the truth behind his words. Although he always praised Dylan as intelligent and capable, the man's eyes couldn't hide the hesitation, as if there was something he couldn't say. Clara felt an unsettling feeling as she listened to his words. Each answer made her feel more confused. Then one evening, while sitting alone at home, Clara suddenly remembered the moments with Dylan, the things they had shared, the sweet words he had said to her. Were those words truly from his heart, or were they just easy words spoken in a romantic moment? Did he really care for her, or was he just looking for something to occupy his time? Why was he avoiding her? Had he realized that she didn't belong in his world? And if that was the truth, why didn't he dare face her? These doubts relentlessly followed Clara. The more she learned about Dylan, the more she realized that each of her questions led her into a dead end, with no satisfactory answers. She wondered whether he was intentionally avoiding her, or if something else was going on that she didn't know about. Clara no longer knew what to believe, and her trust in Dylan began to waver. But despite everything, a part of her still couldn't give up hope. She still wanted to uncover the truth, to understand why that man had left her, and whether they could have a future together, or if it was all just a dream that would never come true. The sense of unease grew larger within Clara, but she still didn't give up. The first faint clues, though vague and unclear, only pushed her to search further. She couldn't let the silence and the unanswered questions haunt her forever. Clara knew that to find the truth, she had to continue facing the mysteries Dylan had left behind, no matter how painful or difficult it might be. Clara had once thought that her encounter with Dylan was merely a coincidence, a surprising moment in her life. She believed that he was just an ordinary man, someone she could trust and share her deepest emotions with. These feelings had grown inside her, like a smoldering fire. And that night on the luxurious train, when Dylan entered her life, Clara felt that everything was right, as if she had found a part of life she needed. She never imagined that behind it all was a huge secret that could change everything. But now, as everything she once imagined about Dylan began to crumble, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. She started to realize that she had fallen into a relationship far more complicated than she had thought. Dylan was not an ordinary man. He was the heir to a large corporation, possessing an immense fortune and power that she could never have imagined. Clara could not believe what she was hearing, what she was seeing. She had never imagined that the man she had entrusted her heart to could be hiding a completely different world, a world she had never stepped into, a world filled with heartbreaking and unimaginable truths. A sense of shock overtook Clara as she realized the truth. Everything she knew about Dylan had now become an unanswered question, and her innocence suddenly disappeared. She couldn't help but ask herself, how could she not have noticed this? How could she have trusted a man she knew so little about, a man whose true nature she had never been able to understand? Clara felt as though she had been deceived, as if everything she had built in her heart, All those emotions were merely a game that Dylan had skillfully orchestrated. Dylan, the man she once thought was a part of her life, now became a vague figure, a surprise in a story she could no longer control. She began to feel like a fool for having opened her heart and given everything to someone who didn't deserve it. The peaceful evening she had spent with him now felt like an illusion, and Clara couldn't help but blame herself for not realizing sooner. She didn't understand why he had remained silent, why he had disappeared just when she needed him the most. Now, the truth was surrounding her, and Clara felt as though she were standing on the edge of a precipice, not knowing where to go. Nevertheless, Clara could not stop. She could not continue living with these unanswered questions. She needed to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She could not continue living in the dark, could not keep chasing a love that she was no longer sure about. She decided to find Dylan, to face him, so she could understand the truth about everything that had happened. She could no longer live in silence, no longer wait for a man she did not fully understand. Clara was determined to meet Dylan and demand that he explain everything. The next day, Clara went to Dylan's office, a place she never imagined she would set foot in. His office was located in a tall, luxurious building, a symbol of wealth and power that she had never had the chance to come into contact with. Clara felt small, lost in this space, but she could not stop. She walked in, her heart pounding, her hands trembling slightly, but still resolute. All she wanted was an answer to everything she had endured, to all the questions that had no solutions. Dylan sat behind his desk, his gaze calm, with no surprise or emotion when he saw Clara standing before him. But Clara could not let his coldness deter her. She could no longer live in this ambiguity. She needed an explanation, a reason for his silence, for the sudden disappearance of the man she had once thought truly loved her. "Clara, I don't know what to say," Dylan finally spoke, his voice low, filled with fatigue. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't keep hiding the truth from you." Clara looked at him, her eyes filled with anguish. "The truth? Then say it. Dylan, why did you leave me alone? Why didn't you tell me the truth about yourself? Who are you? Why did you make me find all this out on my own?" Dylan remained silent for a long time, as if thinking about what to say next. "I am the heir to a large corporation. My entire family, everything I have, is in my hands. But that doesn't mean I can control everything. I've always lived in the shadow of my family, and I didn't want you to become part of that world." Dylan's words were a shock to Clara. She couldn't believe what he had just said. She had thought that they could have a beautiful future together, but now everything had shattered. She didn't understand, couldn't understand. Why had he hidden everything from her? Why hadn't he told her the truth about himself from the beginning? "My truth is not something you want to know, Clara," Dylan continued, his eyes sad, as if sinking into some memory. "I didn't want to pull you into this life of struggle and pressure. I didn't want you to face what I have to endure." It felt as though the entire world had collapsed beneath Clara's feet. She didn't know what to do, didn't know how to face what was happening. She had believed that the love between her and Dylan was real, but now, the truth made her reconsider everything. She couldn't continue living in a relationship where everything was a lie, a deception. She couldn't continue loving a man who couldn't even speak the truth about himself. "Dylan, I can't go on like this. I need to know if you will stand by me, protect me from all the hardships and opposition from your family and society," Clara asked, her voice lost, as if she had completely lost her way. Dylan was silent, his eyes downcast, as if unable to face the question. Clara knew this was the defining moment, the time for them to face all the truths, no matter how painful they might be. But Dylan's response did not come, as heavy silence hung in the air, like a full stop for a relationship in which she had placed all her hope. The light in the hotel room sparkled, but for Clara, it couldn't chase away the rising anxiety in her heart. She stood before the mirror, looking at herself in the elegant evening gown that Dylan had chosen for her, but she couldn't feel joy. All she felt was an unfamiliar sense of not belonging. She no longer felt like the beautiful woman Dylan had once cared for and cherished, but now she saw herself as a part of a game, she couldn't fully understand. No matter how sweet his words were, no matter how gentle his gestures were, nothing could erase the doubts gnawing at her heart. Today, Dylan invited Clara to an important company event, a dinner party held at a luxurious hotel where everyone was dressed beautifully, and curious glances from those present were not in short supply. Clara could clearly feel the difference between her and those around her. They were people who belonged to this world, while she, an ordinary woman, could not fit into such a lavish space. But what made her feel suffocated was not just the cold stares of strangers, but the clear stigma from Dylan's family. The judging looks from his relatives made her feel like an outsider, unworthy of existing in their world. Clara knew that the gossip about her, the uncomfortable glances, and the obvious discrimination were happening. She felt like she was being pushed into a dark corner with no way out. The glances from Dylan's family, the suspicious eyes, seemed never to leave Clara. She felt like she had become the center of attention, but not in the way she had hoped. Small conversations, questions around her, all carried an undertone of scrutiny and exclusion. The people in Dylan's family did not hide their displeasure with her being there. They whispered behind her back as if she were an odd fish in a luxurious fish tank they had created. Clara tried not to let those looks shake her, but their challenge and discrimination only made her feel lonelier than ever. She just wanted to leave, not because of the luxury of the place, but because of the overwhelming sense of alienation she couldn't escape from. Then, as Clara tried to find a way to escape this discomfort, a new truth hit her, a truth she wasn't mentally prepared to face. Her financial situation had become more difficult than ever. She couldn't work like before, couldn't go out to earn money or stand on her own in life. The financial instability, along with the pressures from society and Dylan's family, made her feel completely trapped. She couldn't help but wonder if her life would always be like this, a never-ending cycle with no way out. She wanted to find a solution, an escape, but everything seemed impossible. Doubts about Dylan began to rise within Clara. She couldn't help but ask herself whether he truly loved her, or if he was just looking for a way out of the responsibility he had inadvertently created. She remembered the times he had been absent, the times he had avoided her, not offering any answers when she needed him the most. Were his sweet words, his promises of a bright future, really from his heart, or were they just words to soothe her in the moment? Clara couldn't help but doubt their relationship. The truths that had yet to be revealed, Dylan's silence, all seemed to work against her, making her rethink everything. She began to feel uneasy, not just about Dylan's love, but also about herself. Clara wondered if she had made a mistake by putting all her trust in a man she didn't really understand. Did he truly stand by her, or did he just want to maintain his image in the eyes of his family and society? Regardless of the feelings and love she had for him, she couldn't continue living in this doubt. But each new question only made her feel more lost, not knowing where to go or what to do. Clara could not continue living in ambiguity, could not continue being an outsider in Dylan's life. She decided to face him, to ask him the questions she could no longer ignore. Could Dylan protect her from all the hardships and opposition she faced? Could he confront his family and society to stand by her, not just as a lover, but as a companion in life? Clara needed clear answers, promises that were not just empty words but real actions, proof that he would always stand by her no matter what. Every step Clara took at the evening party seemed to increase the tension within her. She couldn't escape the feeling of pressure weighing on her shoulders. When Dylan didn't show up beside her, when he disappeared again, Clara's heart tightened. She didn't know what she was waiting for, but she knew she couldn't continue standing still in this uncertainty. She had grown too tired of his absence, of the unanswered questions. She had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Love, expectations, fragile hopes, everything was crumbling within Clara's heart. She couldn't continue being the only one in this relationship without certainty. Clara had to make a decision: continue believing in the love Dylan had for her, or face the truth that perhaps that love was just an illusion, something that couldn't last in a world full of discrimination and exclusion. In the dark night, Clara stood alone, looking around, wondering if she could continue enduring everything. Could she go on this path with Dylan, or would she have to walk alone in the darkness of doubt and instability? Clara stood by the window gazing outside, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Dark, gloomy clouds covered the sky, much like the thought she couldn't escape from her mind. She was exhausted, drained from everything that had happened. The past few days had been a whirlwind, questions without answers haunting her, and she felt like she was running in a race with no finish line. Could she overcome it all? Could she find a way out for herself? Or would she be trapped forever in a relationship she couldn't fully comprehend? In just a few hours, Clara would have to attend Dylan's company's big event. She had received the official invitation, and no matter what, she knew she couldn't refuse. This was an opportunity to prove that she was not an outsider in the world Dylan lived in. But at the same time, it brought her endless fear. She would have to face Dylan's family, those who still hadn't accepted her, the scrutinizing gazes of those around her, and the words full of discrimination and prejudice. But what scared her the most was herself, whether she would have the strength to stand tall amidst these challenges. Could she hold herself together, not be swayed by the cold stares, not be defeated by the criticisms? A painful truth began to surface in Clara's heart. No matter how much Dylan said he loved her, no matter how much he promised to stand by her, recent events had only made her doubt him more than ever. Were his words truly sincere, or just temporary comfort in a moment when she needed support? Clara didn't know whether she could trust Dylan, but a part of her still couldn't let go. She had loved him blindly, desperately, even though she knew he came from a completely different world, a world full of power, wealth, and pressure she couldn't fully understand. And as the important company event approached, Clara couldn't help but feel like she was standing at a crossroads. A truth she could no longer avoid was that Dylan had to make a big decision. He had to decide whether he could protect Clara, protect their love, or abandon everything to keep his family and corporation intact. Clara knew that Dylan's family, those close to him, would not accept her. They would do everything they could to separate them, to keep Dylan in a world she couldn't enter. But would Dylan be willing to face all the opposition to stand by Clara? Or would he abandon her for the sake of his family and company? Dylan could not stop his chaotic thoughts. He stood in his office, staring at the large glass window, where the lights of the city slowly faded into the night. He had to face questions that weren't easy to answer. He loved Clara, but this love was putting him in an impossible situation. If he chose Clara, he could lose his family, lose everything he had built over the years. His family, the corporation he inherited, all had rules and standards that he couldn't overlook. But could he give up Clara? Give up the love he had found in her to preserve a world he wasn't even sure he belonged to anymore? Their love was in an irreconcilable situation. With each passing day, Dylan felt more clearly that the sacrifices he had to make wouldn't be easy. He loved Clara, but he also couldn't give up everything his family and society had created for him. He couldn't live in a world where he had to keep his love hidden, but he also couldn't live without the values his family and corporation had always pursued. This was a struggle that Dylan couldn't win with love alone. He had to decide. He had to choose between love and responsibility. Clara received a message from Dylan just before she was about to attend the event. She picked up her phone, her heart racing as she saw his name on the screen. In the message, Dylan simply wrote, "Clara, I need to meet you before the event starts. I can't hide things from you anymore. Everything will change tonight." Clara couldn't believe her eyes. She knew this was the moment everything would change. Would Dylan stand by her, or would he abandon her to hold on to the more important things in his family's eyes? She didn't know if she could bear it if he decided to turn his back on her. But a part of Clara, though scared, still hoped that Dylan would choose her, that he would protect their love, no matter how difficult it might be. When she arrived at the event, everything was unfolding in a tense atmosphere. The sparkling chandeliers lit up the vast space of the banquet hall. The guests, all powerful people in society, were people who would not easily accept outsiders like Clara. She could feel the curious and scrutinizing glances. She couldn't help but feel like an odd fish in a luxurious fish tank where she couldn't find her place. And then, when Dylan appeared, Clara realized that everything was beginning to become clear. He stood there, amidst the crowd, but his eyes were only on her. Despite being surrounded by powerful people, those who always judged her, Dylan couldn't hide the worry in his gaze. He walked towards Clara, not caring about the attention from those around them. "Clara, are you ready to face everything?" Dylan asked, his voice low and filled with concern. Clara looked into his eyes, her heart filled with emotions. She didn't know what she was about to face, but at this moment, she felt the strength in her heart. This was the defining moment, not only for her, but for their relationship. She would have to stand firm, no matter how everything might collapse at any moment. Even if this love would be tested, she wouldn't give up. She would face it all with Dylan, because she believed that true love would overcome all difficulties. Dylan looked at her, his eyes full of determination. Tonight, everything would change. That night, Clara felt everything swirling around her. The atmosphere in Dylan's company's banquet hall was filled with the sparkling light from luxurious chandeliers. But in her heart, each light felt like a cold beam shining directly into her aching and anxious heart. She stood there, amidst the crowd of powerful people, the shareholders of the corporation, people whom Dylan had always treated with the utmost respect and reverence over the years. Now, she felt small, invisible among the sharp eyes and the low conversations full of implications. However, Clara knew that this was the time to face everything. It had been too long that she had lived in silence, had endured doubts, cold glances, and the rejection from Dylan's family. She could not keep living in the shadow of empty promises. She could not keep fooling herself into thinking that everything would be fine if she just kept enduring. Clara had no way back, and in that moment, she decided to step out of the darkness. Dylan stood beside Clara, holding her hand tightly, his eyes full of determination and resolve. Although the doubts and objections from his family were like fierce waves crashing against them, Dylan did not waver. He loved Clara, and that love was strong enough for him to face every challenge, regardless of what would happen. He knew that not everyone in the room would agree with his choice, but he also understood that he could no longer live a fake life. He could no longer hide his love for Clara. The room fell silent when Dylan spoke, declaring something that no one expected. He stood before the crowd, facing the angry eyes of his family, the concerns of the shareholders, and the scrutinizing looks of those present. But Dylan did not back down. He announced to everyone that Clara was carrying twins, that they would have 2 children. And that was no longer a secret. It was the truth that he could not and did not want to hide anymore. His words were like a wave crashing in the middle of the luxurious room, making everyone shocked and unable to believe their ears. Dylan's family, from his parents to his siblings, were stunned and exchanged confused glances. The shareholders, who had always seen Dylan as a symbol of success and talent, now stood motionless. They couldn't accept one simple truth. Dylan, the man they had worshipped, the heir to a large corporation, could love and choose a woman like Clara, someone who did not belong to this world. Dylan's family could not hide their disappointment and anger. They had always planned for Dylan's future, for his life in a world full of power and prestige. They could not accept Clara's presence, could not accept a relationship they considered unfit for the standards they had set. Cold stares and harsh words began to pour out, but Dylan still did not back down. He stood there beside Clara, unwavering. "I cannot do what they want me to do, Mother." Dylan turned, his gaze firm as a man determined to protect what he loved. "Clara is my family, and these 2 children are my future. I will not let anyone, no one, break this." Dylan's family fell silent, unable to say anything. Dylan's words were a shock, but they were the truth they could not deny. The girl they had once considered unworthy of Dylan now carried his 2 children, and Dylan had no intention of stepping back, no intention of abandoning her. This was a powerful blow to everything they had planned for Dylan, to all the standards they had set. But it wasn't just Dylan's family opposing. The corporation's shareholders also began to speak out, unable to hide their displeasure. They feared that this relationship would affect the company's development, that Dylan might become distracted and lose focus on his work. Whispers began circulating in the room, with skeptical questions about Dylan's ability to lead. But Dylan didn't pay attention to any of that. He loved Clara, and he wouldn't give her up for any reason. "This is my decision, and I won't change it," Dylan said, his voice resolute. "I won't let anyone, whether it's family or anyone else, decide my life. Clara and these children are my future, and I will protect them." The room sank into silence. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do when faced with a Dylan like this. His gaze was unshaken, showing no sign of wavering. Dylan had made his decision, and in his heart, Clara was the only one he needed to protect. Clara stood there, feeling like everything was collapsing and focusing on her. She couldn't believe that the man she loved, the one she thought would never stand up to protect her in this life, could do so. She felt like she was living in a dream, but at the same time, she realized that this was the truth. Dylan loved her, and he wouldn't abandon her for the opposition, for the prejudice, or for the pressure that his family and society had placed on him. Not from pain, but from the emotion and the trust Dylan had placed in her. Everything inside her suddenly became clear. She no longer had to worry about the future, no longer had to worry about the challenges that awaited them. Because Dylan had stood firm, had protected her, and they would face everything together. "Thank you, Dylan," Clara said, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you by my side." Dylan held her hand tightly, his gaze full of love. "We will face everything together, Clara. Every difficulty, every challenge, we will face them together. No one can break this family." That night, at the company's important event, a new chapter in Clara and Dylan's life began. They had overcome prejudices, opposition, and in the end, they would have a future together, no matter how many challenges and trials lay ahead. Family and society could oppose, but their love was something no one could take away. In the end, the turbulent and challenging days of Clara and Dylan's life gradually came to a close. They had faced countless difficulties, from family and social barriers to unresolved matters between them. But throughout the journey, one thing remained clear. The love between Dylan and Clara, despite all the adversities they had faced, never wavered. It only grew stronger, like a blazing fire that dispelled every shadow and fog that surrounded their lives. Dylan stood watching Clara, his heart swelling with love and pride. They had overcome everything that was hardest. Now, they were no longer two lonely people in the midst of a chaotic world, but a real family, with children growing inside Clara, carrying the hopes and futures of both. Dylan's family, though they had opposed their relationship from the beginning, was now beginning to accept Clara, and that was their greatest victory. It had not been easy for them to overcome the resistance from Dylan's family. His family, who had always lived by the strict codes and standards of the upper-class society, could not understand Dylan's love for Clara. They could not accept that an ordinary woman, one who did not belong to their world, could step into Dylan's life. They couldn't see that a genuine love could break through all the barriers of discrimination. Everything felt like a relentless wave crashing into their family. But Dylan, despite all the bitter words and cold stares from his family, remained steadfast. He had made up his mind from the moment he realized that true love was the only thing he needed, and no one could take that love away from him. Clara felt the change, though it came gradually, but it was clear enough for her to feel happiness. She no longer had to endure the coldness from Dylan's family. With patience and Dylan's love, they had slowly rebuilt their relationships, starting from small things, simple gestures of care. Dylan's family, though not fully accepting Clara, had at least opened their hearts, giving her a chance to prove that she deserved their love and respect. Things began to change as Dylan decided to publicly announce their relationship. It wasn't just about gaining the acceptance of the family. Dylan and Clara also had to face financial difficulties, barriers they had never imagined before. Clara, with a tough past, lacked solid support from her family and now couldn't return to her job after becoming pregnant. Yet, their love never bent to these challenges. Together, they overcame financial hardships, shared the burdens, and stood strong as a real family. Although things weren't always easy, the power of love made every difficulty feel lighter. Dylan decided to publicly announce their relationship, something he had kept hidden before. At an important company meeting, in front of all the shareholders and key partners, Dylan declared that Clara was his partner, and the 2 children she was carrying would be a part of their family. The public revelation was not easy. It was like a rising wave, sweeping everything in its path. His family members, his close relatives, all had surprising reactions. Some expressed concerns, fearing that this relationship would affect Dylan's work and their family's future. But Dylan, with unshakable determination, made his decision. "Clara is the one I love. She and our children are my family," Dylan declared in front of everyone. "Nothing is more important than this love, and I will protect us, not let anyone break that." With those words, Dylan proved to everyone that true love could overcome everything. The questions, the doubts that people had raised, were gradually answered. Dylan's sacrifice wasn't just giving up a part of his family, but accepting that he would face difficulties and challenges he couldn't foresee. But he was ready to sacrifice everything to protect the woman he loved, to build a happy family with Clara. When Clara looked into Dylan's eyes, she could feel the love and sacrifice he had made for her. She couldn't help but feel deeply moved, for everything he had done wasn't just for her, but also for the children they were about to welcome into their lives. They had overcome hardships together, and now those challenges were gradually becoming a distant memory, no longer painful. Clara no longer felt alone, no longer had to endure society's judgment. She and Dylan had built a home where love was the solid foundation, a place where they could face all of life's storms together. The day they welcomed their children into the world was a special day, not just for Clara and Dylan, but for their entire family. Everyone, from those who had once opposed their relationship, now came to congratulate them. Dylan's family, though still holding some reservations, at least accepted Clara and the children. Dylan's sacrifice, his determination, had changed everything. Their family and friends stood by them, blessing their new life, a life full of hope, love, and unity. With the birth of their children, Clara and Dylan realized that true love isn't just about romantic moments or sweet words. It's the long days of building a future together, the moments of sharing joy and sorrow, the unanticipated sacrifices to bring happiness to the one you love. Dylan had sacrificed many things, from his career to his family, but he had received an invaluable gift, a complete family, a love that would not break. Both Clara and Dylan knew they had been through many hardships and challenges. But now, they had each other. They had their family. Their children would grow up in boundless love, in a family where everyone would always protect and love each other. True love was never easy, but it was what helped them overcome everything. And in those moments, Clara understood that life, no matter how full of challenges and hardships, always had precious things to fight for and sacrifice for. Dylan, looking at Clara smiling in his arms, felt his heart lighter than ever. Everything he had gone through, the hardships, the sacrifices, had now become sweet memories because he had gained the most valuable things in life: a family, a love, and a future that he would always cherish. All that Clara and Dylan had gone through on their journey seemed to culminate in a beautiful moment as they stood side by side, hand in hand, looking at the family they had built from challenges and hardships. Their children, the tiny beings they had created together, were now growing in boundless love. Only those who have gone through challenges like Clara and Dylan can truly understand that true love is never easily attained. But once it enters your life, it becomes an infinite source of strength that helps you overcome all storms. Each of us has our own stories, the difficult and painful times we must face, when we feel like we can't make it through, when we think we've reached a dead end. It is love and perseverance that can save us. What Clara and Dylan went through is proof of that. Life may not be easy, but true love, if we persist and believe in it, will always find a way to help us overcome everything. They didn't only face external challenges, but also their own fears and doubts. But love was the driving force that kept them moving forward, fighting for each other and for their family. When Clara looked at her children, she couldn't help but feel warmth in her heart. These children were the result of the hard days, the proof of the deep love that she and Dylan had for each other. But that love wasn't just the feelings they had for each other. It was a long journey, full of sacrifices, difficult decisions, and sometimes choices between the most important things in life. She remembered all the long nights, those moments when she felt like she couldn't go on, when she had to face prejudice and pressures that weighed down on her. But every time she looked into Dylan's eyes, she felt the steadiness, the determination he had shown. That made her believe that as long as love remained, they would get through everything. Dylan, to Clara, wasn't just a man she loved. He was also a companion, a warrior who stood firmly beside her throughout this journey. He wasn't perfect, and at times he had to face difficult decisions, but he always knew that love and family were the most valuable things he would protect at all costs. Dylan didn't give up on Clara, even though his family opposed him, even though society looked at them with judgment. It was his perseverance, his love for Clara, that helped them overcome everything. He had sacrificed so much, but in return, he got a happy family, with children he would love and protect for life. Each day, Clara and Dylan realized that love isn't something that can only be felt in romantic moments or sweet words. Love is the moments shared through hardships, the times you rise after every fall, the sacrifices that sometimes we don't realize, but are the solid foundation that keeps the relationship strong. And Clara understood that it's in the toughest moments, when the world seems to turn its back on them, that true love becomes clearer than ever. True love is not something that can only exist in sweet moments, but it's the thing that helps us fight and overcome all challenges, no matter how big. They had gone through many challenges, and in each of those challenges, love had made them stronger. Clara knew that life wasn't only about joy, but also facing pain, loss, and dark moments. But it was in those moments that she and Dylan found the strength to keep going. They didn't give up. They didn't let difficulties stop their love. And that gave them a family, a home they could be proud of. Just by looking at their family, at the loving children growing day by day, Clara felt something very clear. All the sacrifices and hardships she and Dylan went through were absolutely worth it. They had done it, and they would keep doing it. For Clara, the love Dylan had for her wasn't just romance. It was protection. It was the unconditional sacrifice he made for her. And from that love, they had built a happy family. A family not only full of affection, but also full of resilience and perseverance. Dylan also understood that the decisions he made weren't always easy. He had sacrificed so much to have Clara and this family, but every time he looked into her eyes, every time he saw the smile of their child, he realized that all those sacrifices were truly worth it. The love he had for Clara wasn't just in the words he said, but in everything he had done to protect her, to protect their family. Everything he had sacrificed, everything he had let go of, was for one reason only. It was the love he had for Clara, the desire for them to have a complete, happy family. The lesson Clara and Dylan wanted to share with everyone following their story is a lesson about love, perseverance, and sacrifice. Sometimes, life may push us into difficult situations, challenges we couldn't anticipate. But if we believe in love, if we have enough perseverance to hold on to what we love, then nothing is impossible. They prove that true love can help us overcome all difficulties, all challenges. And it's the sacrifice in that love that helped them find happiness. Love is not a magic that can help us avoid all pain and challenges, but it is the driving force that keeps us going, that helps us not give up no matter how difficult the path may be. Clara and Dylan proved that true love can change everything, can help us build a happy family, no matter the conditions outside. And now, their story has ended. the lesson they leave for all of us remains. Believe in love. Believe that love will help you overcome all difficulties. Be persistent and sacrifice for the people you love, because that's the only way to build a complete life, a happy family. So, if you also believe in the power of love, if you believe that love can overcome all challenges, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to share this story with everyone who needs encouragement and hope in life. Let Clara and Dylan's story become an inspiration for all of us, so that each person can see the value of love in their own life.